In the ever-changing landscape of top-tier jets in War Thunder, there are always some things you could probably be doing better in order to get more kills and die less. So say you bought the F4S, you're struggling with it, you're not getting many kills, or say you just got the top tier and you didn't buy a premium and you're struggling and not really getting many kills. My goal today is to help you sort of get a feel for top tier, get a basic understanding of how the games play out, what to do and what not to do, and hopefully you'll get a little bit better. Before I get into the specifics of all the little tips and stuff I want to bring up today, I should mention there are definitely planes in War Thunder that are objectively better than all the other ones. Let's take the F-16 and the MiG-29 for example. Those two planes are probably going to dominate most of the matches you play. They are just better. They're going to have equal or better armaments with much better flight performance. That's not to say that you can't compete in top tier, because most of the time flight performance isn't what decides who wins the games. It's usually early game presence by each team. The majority of the time, after the two teams merge, whichever team comes out with more players still alive is going to be the team who wins. And because we're on the topic of teams, let's get into the first tip I have for you today. Stay with your team. Top tier jets definitely require a bit more team play than the lower battle ratings in this game, especially since the player count each game got bumped up to 16v16. The impact you can have as an individual player is at an all-time low. As much as I wish this wasn't the case, and as much as I wish it could go back to a 10v10 or 8v8, I don't think that's ever going to happen, unfortunately. So as I said, your individual impact as a player is at an all-time low, meaning you are going to have to rely on your team a lot more. The best thing you can do as an individual player is sitting with your team while still trying to kill as many people as you can. You don't want to end up alone, but you also don't want to end so far back in your team that you don't do anything. I don't know about you guys, but the games that I play and I get 0 kills and stay alive the whole game are just as frustrating, if not more frustrating, than getting 1 or 2 kills and dying. As I said, unfortunately, your impact as an individual player is much less than it used to be, but that's basically the best you're going to be able to do in order to maximize your impact as an individual player. Now, why is this even the case? Well, now that there's like a whole bunch of crazy powerful weapons, like, we got R27 ERs, Python 3s, all of these crazy good missiles that are getting more and more modern with every single update. Well, the aforementioned 16v16 is the biggest thing, but there's also the fact that weapons are getting more and more modern, there's many more of them, and you're going to be dealing with a whole lot of them at once. So clutching up, 1v6, 1v7 isn't nearly as easy in top tier as it would be in earlier jets or even props. Essentially, flight performance isn't going to matter if you can't survive 5,000 missiles coming at you at one time. Before I get into the next thing, I should also mention what happens if you don't stick with your team. If you go straight into the furball, you go to the first players you see, you will suddenly have 5 or 6 people turned around for you, and you are going to have 5,000 missiles coming at you. And when this happens, it becomes a lot harder to stay fast because you're having to maneuver, cut your afterburner, and flare, so you're going to be bleeding a lot of speed, they're going to catch up to you, and eventually you are going to be killed. Especially if you're in something like an F4S or something that's not a MiG-29 or F-16 or F-14. So even though there are a million missiles coming at you from every direction in top tier, there are some things you can do to make it harder for your enemies to kill you. The easiest way of doing this, and the most common way of doing this currently in top tier, is to fly as low as you can to the ground, because that way you are basically immune to semi-active radar homing missiles. Now, I'm not super knowledgeable about radars in this game, or radars in real life for that matter, but essentially when you get really low to the ground, the radar sees you and the radar sees the ground, and the radar is like, damn man, what the fuck? And then the missile that the radar is guiding nosedives straight into the ground, into a tree, into a lake, or into the side of someone's home, and you'll still be flying around to fight another fight. Despite the fact that like 75% of people actually already do this in War Thunder, there is a surprisingly large amount of people who are taking their F4S and flying like 1,000 meters off the ground, trying to bomb their base and ignoring everything that's happening around them. If you are one of those people, I hope this video has found you, and I hope you stop doing that. And everybody else, you've probably noticed that and picked up those free kills. Other than making yourself invincible to SAR missiles, there are some other ways to help keep yourself alive. And this one, I've been kind of beating a dead horse here, and so has everybody else, but you have to maintain some sort of situational awareness. You have to be looking around constantly, using your free look key and flying with your keyboard, because there are going to be missiles coming at you from every direction a lot. And despite SAR missiles probably being the most effective thing to use nowadays, heat-seeking missiles like Sidewinders, Python 3s, Magics, etc. still exist, and they don't ping RWR, and there's no other warning that there's a missile coming. And unlike SAR missiles, you can't just fly really low to the ground to fool the heat seekers. And that's what you have flares for. Fortunately, if you see a missile coming at you that is a heat seeker, it's extremely easy to flare. All you have to do is cut your throttle a little bit if it's rear aspect, drop a couple pops before it gets too close, and that missile's going to go straight for your countermeasures. Of course, there are a lot of missiles that are very flare resistant. Let's take the Magic 2 for example. If someone gets a Magic 2 off on you from less than a kilometer rear aspect and you didn't notice it until it's launched, with your afterburner still on, you're going to have a tough time flaring it. In this case, the same method still applies. You want to cut your throttle as quickly as you can while trying to point your engine as far away from that person, from that missile as you can. You want that missile that you're flaring to be coming at you from a direction that is as far away as possible from direct rear aspect at your engine. This is why if people shoot front aspect missiles at you from direct front, you can literally not cut your afterburner at all, drop a single countermeasure and turn slightly, and the missile will fly straight past you. The last tip I have for you today is to absolutely know your plane, know the radar, know the flight performance, know the missiles, and you're automatically just going to have a better time. I'm going to leave you with one more tip today. I was going to put in the, classic don't tunnel vision, but I kind of think that falls into, being aware like I've talked about earlier. Plus, that's further beating a dead horse that I've already beat into the dirt. So instead, I decided to include this. Know your plane, know the radar, know the missiles, know the flight performance, and you're going to automatically have a better time just from that alone. I feel like I see this the most with Rank 7 premium planes, because Rank 7 premiums, most of them are like 11.3, so they're going to be in top tier. I'll see a lot of these people throw missiles at you from way too close, from way too far of an aspect, and then throw multiple at once as if they're going to hit you because they don't exactly know how missiles kind of work. Firing a missile doesn't automatically mean it's going to track and kill, and I feel like that's something a lot of people sort of expect. Same goes for the use of radars. I mean, believe me, there's a lot to learn when it comes to radars in this game. If you're brand new, there's a lot of key bindings that you have to have, and for a new player, this is quite daunting. I know even when they started adding this stuff, I was like, hold on, what the fuck is this? Not knowing your plane, not knowing your radar, not knowing your missiles is automatically going to make top tier much more difficult. But even if you do have your key bindings set up correctly, you have all the knowledge you need for your radars and weapons, it's still a very steep learning curve to get good at top tier. Now, before I end off this video, I do have a bit of a bonus tip, or, well, I guess it's more of an anti-tip. I'm just going to tell you a couple of things you should not be doing in top tier. You should not be bombing if you're in top tier. I understand if you're trying to get to top tier, sure, but if you're already at top tier, you have your F-14 or F-16 and you're bombing still, you're kind of just a detriment to your team. Like, I've seen way too many F-16s and F-14s bombing in top tier. Like, bro, you made it. You can play the game now. Now, I sort of understand if you're playing like a premium, like F-4S or something, and you're trying to just get to top tier so you can get the planes you want. But you're in an F4S, you still have a bunch of Sparrows and AIM-9Ls. I highly suggest just using your plane as a fighter. It's so much more fun than just mindlessly bombing your way to top tier. Plus, if you bomb your way to top tier and then you get to your F16 or F14 or MiG-29 or something, you're gonna not really have any idea what you're doing, you wouldn't have had any practice with the game, and you're gonna have not a great time. Plus, if you actually play your plane as a fighter, you can help your team out more, you can win the games more, and if you win the games more, you make more research and silver lions, which is a win-win for everybody. Now, something I see a lot of the time as a counter to that statement is like, people will say, oh, I get a couple kills after I bomb my base every single time. It's like, okay, maybe you do get kills a lot after you bomb your bases, but the kills that you are getting probably don't matter as much as if you were actually going into the early game and getting kills early, because that's going to have a much better impact for the entire match. So basically, all I'm saying is no bomb run. I think that's all I've got as far as tips. I'm not going to go into like flight performance details of all the different meta planes, because I feel like that's, I have videos on the F-16s and MiG-29 and F-14s, so like, I feel like there's not really a point. Also, not going to go into detail on radars. There are radar guides out there that can do a whole lot better job at explaining radars than I ever could. And one more thing, all this stuff could be completely invalid in 2 months when they add something crazy to the game. Who knows? The gameplay at top tier is constantly shifting with every single new thing they add, so this could be completely invalid and probably will be invalid pretty soon. Who knows? Alright, that's it from me. I hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Later.